This video is sponsored by Vennture Mouthpieces. Hey trumpet nerds! Today, we're talking about probably the highest keyed trumpets ever made, and what could be the best horn to play Brandenburg 2 on, the C Piccolo Trumpet. Probably most of you have seen a regular B-flat A piccolo trumpet before, a trumpet that's an octave higher and half the length of a standard B-flat trumpet. If you thought that was the highest trumpet you could get, guess again. This is the tiny little baby C Piccolo Trumpet. Now this one looks a little longer because of its herald style bell, but it is actually a whole step higher than a B-flat piccolo trumpet. You might be wondering, why on earth would you ever play such a tiny little tutor? Mostly for the treacherous second Brandenburg Concerto by Johann Sebastian Bach, which is not only really high, but also pretty technical and delicate. The Brandenburg trumpet part was actually written about 300 years ago for the natural trumpet in F, which was quite a bit longer than a modern B-flat trumpet. This was so long ago that trumpets didn't have any valves, so in order to play scales or melodies, you had to perform in the extreme upper register, literally in the modern day lead trumpet range. This is a true specialty called clarino trumpet playing. Today, there are a number of really good clarino players performing the Brandenburg on the F natural trumpet, but I would say almost everybody performs it on a B-flat piccolo trumpet, which is the shortest and highest instrument usually found in a professional trumpet player's arsenal. Even though the B-flat piccolo is literally less than half the length of a natural trumpet in F, the B-flat piccolo's valves and higher fundamental pitch makes this piece a lot more secure. So, how could the C Piccolo make Brandenburg so much easier that players like Reinhold Friedrich, Edward Tarr, Ray Mace, David Washburn, and Caleb Hudson all choose to use it instead of a B-flat pick? The first, kind of most obvious thing is that playing the Brandenburg on C Piccolo puts the fingerings in F major, which is super familiar to all of us used to playing on the A Piccolo trumpet for the countless Baroque pieces that are set in D major. There are also several trills and technical passages in the Brandenburg that are just easier to play in F major, like the trill in the opening of the first movement. When you're on a B-flat pick, the opening has a slightly awkward D to E trill, while in the C Piccolo, it's a simple C to D trill, which lets you use the common trick of trilling open to fourth valve. The most sweated over passage in this piece is usually this one, in the second half of the first movement, which has 3 high concert Gs in the space of only 7 measures. On the B-flat pick, these are high As, and people use various strategies to help nail them, including different fingering options, as well as removing the fourth valve slide and playing them fourth valve only. Some folks even use a small secondary bell called a Brandenburg bell to make this note sound more like the rest of them. On the C Piccolo, however, that note is just an open high G. Some people find it easier to just pick off compared to a high A on the B-flat piccolo. There is actually another really good reason to consider using a C piccolo for your next Brandenburg attempt. Believe it or not, the Brandenburg is not actually a trumpet solo, but a concerto for 4 musicians: trumpet, flute, oboe, and violin, all in front of a small group of string players and harpsichord. So even though the trumpet part is high and difficult, the challenge is to somehow play it while playing nicely with a bunch of comparatively quiet instruments. The C Piccolo makes balancing with them a little easier due to its lighter, glassier timbre, which helps you play with nuance and delicacy more similar to that of the other soloists. Another aspect of this is actually the herald bell design of some of the most common C Piccolos. I feel like the bell being a little further away helps reduce the amount of your own sound you hear while you're playing, called feedback, which can help give you a more accurate picture of how your sound is balancing and blending with the other soloists. But before you go buy a C pick for your collection, let's talk about some of the downsides to using a C Piccolo. To me, the biggest thing is that besides the Brandenburg, there just aren't a ton of situations I can think of where a C Piccolo would be a better choice than a typical B-flat A pick. Sure, there's little things here and there, like maybe this pick part in the Wound Dresser by John Adams, which asks for a C Piccolo, but I would guess that's a transposition and not an actual request for a C Piccolo to be used. You could also maybe try it on the high trumpet bits at the end of Bolero or Petrushka, But again, these are all licks that are arguably going to be basically just as easy to play on the B-flat pick. When doing the research for this video, I asked famed trumpet performer, teacher, and C Piccolo Trumpet user Mr. Ray Mace if he ever found other occasions to use it. And he was like, well, not often, but that he has used it on some contemporary pieces over the years, and once even broke it out for a studio recording gig for a jingle for Liberty Coins ad back in the 80s, which I linked in the description below. Another thing is that C Piccolos, honestly, are just pretty different to play than a B-flat A pick. Sort of like the adjustment needed for switching between a regular C trumpet and the smaller E-flat D trumpet. Not only is the blow-in resistance different, but the intonation tendencies can be really challenging to learn and adjust to. Like, I had to learn a fun new fingering for low C, 1 and 4, since the slot of the open low C on both of my C picks was so wide and unpredictable. Actually, this video's sponsor, Vennture Mouthpieces, is helping me design a mouthpiece specifically for the C Piccolo. Basically, the mouthpiece from my collection that worked the best right away was one of my favorite old mouthpieces, but it was slightly too small for me. So Vennture used VenCAD to make a few adjustments, and now I'm actually testing this design and a few other new designs cheaply and quickly with 3D print prototyping, again, made possible with VenCAD. Use my coupon code TINYTUTOR at checkout to get 10% off of any brass mouthpiece from Vennture, which also helps support my channel. So let's say you actually wanted to buy one of these. What options do you have? I'll start with the two C Piccolos that I have. First is the Yamaha 991, a 4-piston valve C Piccolo made from 1975 to 1981. It has a .445-inch bore, which is just a little bit smaller than a .450-inch bore size of the modern Schilke P54, and a small curved lead pipe, which means it's actually tuned with the bell, which is 3 3/4 inches. The 991 is very similar to its predecessor, the Yamaha 918, which you can see in this 1970s Yamaha catalog. There's also the later Yamaha 9910, which was only made for a little bit in the 1980s. It also has 4 valves, but it plays in not only C, but also B flat and A, changing keys using bell extensions as well as a longer set of first and third slides to use for the B-flat A side. Another change on the 9910 is that it has a tunable trumpet shank lead pipe instead of a fixed one like on the 991. This one also has a slightly larger 4-inch bell. Sadly, the Yamaha C Piccolos have been out of production for many years, but you can still sometimes find them for sale used, which is how I got both of these. Another awesome but discontinued C Piccolo is actually the C B-flat Blackburn Piccolo Trumpet, pictured here in David Hickman's pedagogy book. Don't worry, if you want to get a new C Piccolo, there are actually a surprising number of options. For the fans of the industry standard Schilke P54 B-flat A Piccolo, there's the Schilke C54 C Piccolo, with a matching .450-inch bore size and cornet shank lead pipe, instead of the trumpet shank found on many of the others. There's also the cornet shank Egger Galileo C Piccolo, designed with Reinhold Friedrich, which has a little bit smaller .440-inch bore size, which might make it even a little more agile to play. I instantly appreciate this model just because it has tuning aids already installed, including a first valve trigger and a third slide ring. Spada in Switzerland also offers a Herald-style 4-valve piston C Picc. Scherzer, well known for their B-flat A rotary piccolo trumpets, also produces a version of that instrument in high C, the 8110, with a fairly tiny but typical rotary pick bore size of .412 inches. My friend Alex Wilborn and I actually got to test this instrument thanks to fellow trumpet nerd Dr. Dan Shipman, and it was really quite impressive and fun to play. In my opinion, the biggest limitation of the Scherzer is that you don't have a right-hand pinky hook to help apply that very necessary mouthpiece pressure like you do on the other piston options. Tyne, always the overachievers, offers 2 different model C Piccolos, both a piston C Picc in a .452-inch bore and a rotary C Picc in .431-inch bore, which also features a 4th valve slide trigger. The award for the most clever design goes to the Chromat C Piccolo, which has 3 piston valves with a 4th rotor valve extension on the 3rd slide, kind of like a Yamaha 9825. And the lever for operating that rotor is actually on top of the trumpet, I guess maybe to be operated by the left pointer finger. This rotor extension is also pretty long, maybe long enough to lower the pitch by an extra 3 or 4 half steps. Okay, trumpet nerds, you might be wondering, are there any trumpets higher pitched than a C Piccolo? Well, according to Ed Tarr, Schilke did once get an order for a D Piccolo trumpet, which would be a whole step higher than a C Picc, but I'm not actually sure it was ever made. Apparently, the biggest difficulty in making valve trumpets this short short is how short the second valve slide actually needs to be. You can see on many of the C Piccolos I showed you today that the second valve slide is, yeah, really short, but apparently even these are actually a compromise length since it's so tricky to make it short enough to be in tune. There's also this monstrosity made by Trent Hamilton, the Super Piccolo Trumpet, which is somehow a whole 2 octaves higher than a standard B-flat trumpet. There definitely have to be some compromises involved here to get around the second valve length thing I was just talking about, but I really love the effort. I guess the prize for the smallest trumpet I've seen goes to this crazy little thing, the Zarathustra trumpet, once owned by the famed Metropolitan Opera principal trumpet player Mel Broyles, which is literally a horn taken off the handlebar of a bicycle with a trumpet mouthpiece plugged into it. I mean, yeah, it is technically smaller than a C Picc, but it doesn't have any valves, so it's not really going to be much help in most real-life musical situations, besides finally nailing the high C in Zarathustra. Thanks for joining me for this episode of John Talks Trumpet, and I'll see you on my next nerdy trumpet adventure.